Hello everyone, this is Jackson Borges coming to you from All Saints Episcopal Church here in downtown Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this week's Summer Organ Recital. Today's program could be called a few different things. You could call it musical miniatures, a recital of bonbons, encores, or even who, because most of the composers on today's program may not be very familiar to many of us. In that spirit, we begin with a piece called the Spanish Military March by Humphrey John Stewart. Humphrey John Stewart was an Englishman who was a transplant to America. He made it all the way to the West Coast and worked for a time in Buffalo, New York before he returned to San Diego, California, where he became the organist for the Panama, California Exposition of 1915, which was held in Balboa Park, and for which the largest outdoor pipe organ in the world was built, that of the great Spreckels organ built by the Austin Organ Company. Humphrey Stewart was also a member of the Bohemian Grove in Northern California and was charged with writing certain drama plays for that group. And this piece comes from one of those, dating from 1916, entitled Gold. And this is his Spanish Military March. From the music of Humphrey John Stewart, we now move to a rather obscure composer by the name of Roy Spalding Stoughton. I read a while back that Roy was a banker, had a career in banking, but composed these beautiful, descriptive, very lush pieces. In fact, one of his larger scale works for solo organ is based on the 1001 Arabian Nights. This piece bears the title Where Wild Judea Stretches Far, and it's a little piece but has some of the most beautiful harmonies for which Roy was known. So enjoy this colorful little piece entitled Where Wild Judea Stretches Far by Roy Stoughton. Staying in America, but moving now back to the West Coast, we move to a piece entitled The Woodland Flute Call by Fannie Charles Dillon. Fannie Dillon had quite a musical pedigree. She studied with, among other folks, a gentleman named Reuben Goldmark in New York, who also was a teacher of not only Aaron Copland, but also George Gershwin. She made her life and career teaching and composing in California, in fact, the Orange County and Los Angeles County area, and was known for incorporating bird songs into her pieces. Of course, her fame being eclipsed most likely by the French organist and composer Olivier Messiaen, who did the same thing in his pieces. But Fannie did them here in the States, in California, and counted among her students the composer John Cage. This is another descriptive piece, which is going to be part of a set of 2 pieces of kind of nature-themed encores, and it's a very beautiful descriptive piece. So take a trip into the forest, walk around the trees, and enjoy Fannie Dillon's Woodland Flute Call. similar to Fannie Dillon, Powell Weaver's little tableau or characteristic piece entitled The Squirrel is likewise a rather descriptive piece of the squirrel in nature. It doesn't require a lot of explanation. I think that you will have an easy time of picturing a squirrel darting around looking for food and whatnot in this piece. So the second of two nature encores, this, The Squirrel, by the American composer Powell Weaver. From Powell Weaver's Squirrel, we move to Paris with a work entitled the Bolero des Concerts by the Parisian composer and organist Lefébure-Wély. Wély, in his day, was known kind of a Virgil Fox character, if you will, somewhat of a Liberace of the organ. He was a tremendous improviser and was widely known for his improvisations, which were very descriptive in characteristic. He would often improvise during church, operatic improvisations, chase scenes, fight scenes, storm scenes, that kind of thing, as during his day, the main money holders of the church at Saint Eustache, where he was the organist, were all opera aficionados. So, trying to keep happy his audience, he would improvise in this manner. This piece, a bolero being an old Spanish dance form, is in three sections. The opening, which you will kind of envision the toreadors coming out, if you will, and then a lovely middle section, and then capped off by a bit of a repeat of the opening section. So this Bolero des Concerts by the French composer Lefébure-Wély. And now back to San Francisco, California with the music of Richard Purvis, Richard Purvis is somewhat in my lineage again. He was the teacher of my coach Tom Hazelton when he was in the Bay Area, and it was a pleasure to come to know so much of Purvis's music through Tom before he died. And this piece has always been a bit of a curious piece to me, and it is entitled The Melody in Mauve. Purvis wrote some of the most gorgeous melodies in his music, and if you are a classic film aficionado, you might think that the main theme of this piece sounds rather familiar. In fact, very familiar. It is very reminiscent of the film score to the movie Spellbound, which, if you have time and feel like falling down the YouTube rabbit hole, I encourage you to do so and look up the Spellbound Concerto by the composer Mikls Rocha. Wonderful, wonderful film composer he was. But the main melody of Purvis's Melody in Mauve sounds rather close to that of Miklos's Spellbound movie score. But it's yet another example of Purvis's turn of phrases and use of the colors of the instrument. So enjoy this Melody in Mauve by Richard Purvis. Sweet little piece by Richard Purvis there. And that brings us to the end of this week's recital of bonbons, encores, whatever you'd like to call it. We go back to Paris with the music of Théodore Dubois, Dubois is widely considered to be about a second or third tier composer from the French Romantic era, hobnobbing with such figures as Widor, Alexandre Guillemot, and folks like that. Dubois had designs on being an opera composer, and he did compose operas, but they just didn't have the staying power that, say, Puccini or Verdi did, or even Charles Gounod or Camille Saint-Saëns. But he did write a number of rather smallish organ works and is known primarily today probably for his oratorio, The Seven Last Words of Christ, which we have done here at All Saints in St. George's Parish, as well as a larger scale toccata in G major for solo organ. I think that this piece we'll finish with today is another one of his more well-known pieces, and it is from his collection of 12 new pieces. And this is entitled Fiat Lux, which translates to Let There Be Light. With this piece, I thank you so much for joining us this week. We will be back here again next week for the next installment of our summer organ recitals. And if you have time, we invite you to visit our website, allsaintsandstgeorges.org. If you are so moved, we invite you to donate to help us keep these programs going. If you can't donate, that's just fine. Look around, see all the things we have here, and continue to tune in to our services on Sundays, our nightly Compline service with Mother Eunice Dunlap, and these organ recitals with me. So, I do hope that you enjoyed this week. I look forward to having you join me next week. And we close this week's program with Théodore Dubois' Fiat Lux, Let There Be Light.